Hey writers, I'm sorry that I'm not here today. I had to be out all of a sudden, um, but you should have a substitute in here. I'm expecting that things run exactly as they have been the past couple of days. I'm hoping to see that the marble jars are a little fuller. We're going to be watching a video for a little bit. You'll get a chance to be flipping through your writing notebooks at one point as well. And then at the end of class, we're actually going to be starting a read aloud. You're going to be reading a piece of a memoir by Jerry Spinelli. He is a pretty famous author. You may have read some of his works before. So I wanted to spend some time getting through this book. I'm going to get a pretty good feeling of how our class went based on how far each period made it in their read aloud. How much did we have time for at the end? So I'm looking forward to some really good reports so I can come back and we can get back to work. So let's get started. Pretty soon, I believe next week, we have an author coming to visit our school. His name is Paul Smith. He has written a book called Jason and the Draconauts, and there are a couple that come right after it too. The last time he came to visit our classrooms, he actually shared some pretty neat information with me. He told me that oftentimes writers really only have a couple of topics that they constantly go back to. Even when we think we're writing about new topics, really deep down, we are going back to these topics that we are constantly repeating. So I thought about all of the writing that I've done in my life. I feel like I've done a lot of writing, and I can't really believe that he thinks I only write about a few topics. So I looked in my writer's notebook, and believe it or not, I realized that he was right. I actually write a lot about music because music is so important to me. So somehow it ends up making it into a lot of my own writing pieces. Writers of memoir oftentimes reread their entries. They reread their memories, their jottings, in order to help them grow bigger ideas. We often think about what is truly important to us, and we develop that into a passionate, meaningful memoir. So today I want to teach you that writers don't just chronicle their life or record their lives. Writers interpret. When analyzing their life stories, writers ask, what are the big ideas here? And then they look for themes and issues that appear again and again in their entries and memories. So, like I said, I was flipping through my own writer's notebook recently, and I noticed that I write a lot about music. Back in the narrative unit, I noticed an entry about a group called Vestal Voices that I was in. I didn't get too far into this writing entry because it had been a quick write, but I want to read it back over, and I want to share that with you now. So I'm going to flip over to my writing notebook here. So here's an entry from way back in November 12th. This was from, I think it was a lesson about turning points. Yes, let's see, that was strong feelings. So I'd listed some strong feelings, but then in this lesson, we were doing the first time, the last time, that kind of stuff. So this was part of turning points. So the last time I sang with Vestal Voices. I remember the last time I sang with Vestal Voices. I was 18 years old and it was my last year of high school. All my life I was a musician. I loved to play piano and I loved to sing. I loved standing on the risers with the singers around me. I loved that the singers around me felt like my family. I loved the heat of the stage lights. I put on my green robe one more time. I gave it one last sip and walked to the risers, soaking every last moment in. I thought nothing will ever be like this again. Like he always does, Mr. Powell looked out at us with a smile. He pointed to his heart, then his head. We all thought, heart on fire, brain on ice, in that moment. So that is as far as I had gotten because it had been a quick write, and here's a picture of Vestal Voices in our green robes that I was talking about. But as I was reading this, I was trying to figure out, what is this really about? What is the theme, or what is the deeper meaning of this? Because there's a reason I wrote about this. It's not really just about me being in a group called Vestal Voices. I noticed that it's actually kind of about me stressing out about the change that's going to be happening, and how this was my last time. My time in this group was coming to an end. So I'm actually writing about change, a little bit about fear as well. So did you notice how I just started to dig deeper? As I was analyzing this, as I was interpreting my own writing, I wasn't just summarizing events anymore. That's what we did in the beginning of the year. Instead, I started digging deeper and I asked myself, what deeper issue could this address? What is the theme? What is the issue? And this piece shows my struggle with change and my fear of life moving on. So what I want to do is go back to my text and I want to jot down some of those ideas before I forget them. So here's my writing notebook again. What I also noticed about myself is that I think I was writing a memoir without even knowing it, because this part up here, the top half, was actually kind of essay style. I was describing. But then once I got down to here, I put on my green robe. This started telling a story. So that's pretty cool that I was doing that in November without really knowing it. I had some dialogue going on in here. But this is where up here I'm describing what I already know, so what I'm comfortable with. So what I'm comfortable with. Down here, I'm starting to tell my fond memories. But what I really want the heart of my story to be, I'm going to put a star up here and a heart, is I want to stress the idea of change. So I've already started to make a plan for myself for how this could turn into a memoir. So I just gave a couple of notes there to help myself remember that. Now, if I were to continue going back in my notebook, I could probably find other entries that I could do this exact same thing with. I can look back at my past entries and ask myself, is there a deeper issue or theme within my entries? So writers, today we're going to take some time to dig into your journals and to take a look at some of your past entries. Are there any deeper meanings within your entries? Then, just like I did in my notebook, you can annotate on the sides. What do you really want to talk about? If you get through your entries, or maybe you have a brand new notebook and you don't have any entries to look at, I want you to think about what topics might be important in your life. I want you to write those down. And then I want you to start an entry. What is important in your life that you could write about? So you are going to have about 15 minutes in your writing notebook to be digging through, looking at old entries, reading old entries. I suggest you read them so you remember what you're talking about. And don't just read it so that you can summarize it. I want you to read it to analyze it. What is really going on in there? So this video is going to come to an end, and the teacher is going to give those final directions in order to get into our notebooks. Remember, I'm looking for our best behavior today. I'm looking for you to act as if I were in the room. I look forward to hearing a great report. Happy writing.